Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Digital Transformation of Procurement for Mid-Sized Companies. We're going to get started here in just a moment, but first let's go over some Q&A logistics. We will be taking questions during today's webinar and answer a few at the close of the webinar. So if you have any during the presentation, be sure to submit them in the Q&A box. The Q&A chat window is where you can type in any questions, and that goes for both our live and our on-demand viewers. If we don't get to them right away, we'll get to them via email after the presentation of the webinar. I'm your host, Foy Maynard, VP of Sales at Paramount Workplace. I've been in procurement and spend management solutions for over 16 years, and my main focus is identifying and enabling strategic partnerships, fostering deeper relationships with partners, and recruiting targeted value-added resellers to maintain and build our presence in the market. I work with partners and customers for mid-market and enterprise ERP solutions worldwide. We're very pleased to have our guest speaker, Duncan Jones, who is joining us from Forrester. Duncan is the Vice President, Principal Analyst, serving sourcing and vendor management professionals. Duncan contributes to Forrester's offerings for sourcing and vendor management professionals and for application development and delivery professionals. He is a leading expert on business application strategies and e-purchasing applications, such as e-procurement and supplier risk, performance management, software as a service, packages, applications, and customer development. Duncan advises clients on their application strategy in these areas. Also joining us today is Spencer Chambers, VP of Product Management and Strategic Initiatives at Paramount Workplace. Spencer leads product and strategic initiatives for Paramount Workplace, working with internal and partner sales, delivery, and technology teams. He identifies and develops new opportunities that leverage innovative technologies to deliver robust spend management solutions to the market. How are you, Duncan? Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Foy, and thanks for inviting me to talk about this important topic.
Absolutely. And Spencer, thank you for joining us as well.
Likewise, thanks.
Duncan's going to go through the agenda, and then we'll collaborate throughout the webinar.
Yeah, so thanks, Foy. So I'm going to talk a little bit about procurement's new priorities and how you need to address those with the latest smart software. I'm going to focus a little bit on usability and what that means for procurement groups. Then I've got some insight on the obstacles that you may face to implementing an e-procurement solution and how those have been largely removed by the latest software. And then we're going to finish with some summary recommendations. So let's get started. This is some data from a survey that we did with decision makers in a large number of businesses. We interviewed thousands of decision makers in various roles, and one of the questions we asked them was, what are the top initiatives for your organization as a whole? And of course, there's a couple of messages here. One, what a lot of things you have to worry about in your organization. But the second is actually some of them are traditional procurement priorities like reducing costs and maybe compliance with regulations. But I would argue that some of these other ones like innovation, simplifying the organization, and accelerating the digital business, they're actually more important for procurement now than previously. And if you can demonstrate how you're furthering the organization's progress against these goals like innovation and customer expectations, then you're going to have more strategic importance to the organization. You're going to have more status. You're going to have more chance of getting investment in good technology. So we need to reposition what we do to explain why it's relevant to these goals. Maybe talk a little bit less about reducing costs. We do that with procurement people, but we don't need to talk about it. So in order to address those objectives, I summarize it by this sort of maturity model. I've been studying procurement applications for over 10 years now, and when I first started looking at them, it was all about cost saving. It was aggregating spend with fewer suppliers and using new negotiation techniques like auctions to squeeze prices. Maybe 5 years ago, it started switching to value, and procurement people would say, oh, we're not only about cost, it's all around quality and delivery and service, but really it was still mostly cost. going forward, procurement has to be positioning itself as doing things that the customer needs you to do, not the internal customer, colleagues in your business, but the real customers of your firm. They need you to do things, and they need you to enable your colleagues to buy things quickly and easily so that those colleagues can focus on serving the customers. They need you to protect the customers from unsafe, unreliable, or unethical suppliers. And they need you to drive co-innovation with suppliers so that your products become better, more infused with technology and the new digital products that we're seeing increasingly. So let's talk a little bit more about some of those goals here. So I've got a bit of a baseball theme here. Enabling colleagues, driving digital business, protecting customers, and stimulating innovation. So let's talk about the enablement point. So to enable employees to buy stuff, we have to meet their usability expectations. Let me talk a little bit about what that means. If we are perceived as the guy on the right, the umpire or referee or the policeman slowing people down, getting in their way, telling them they can't buy that product from that vendor, we're not really going to get the support that we need. But if we're the person on the left, the bat boy, our colleague he needs some tools to do his job. There's a picture about to hurl a ball at him. He needs a new bat. We're supposed to be the guy running on with a new bat, gets it and delivered to him there and then immediately. We want to be perceived much more like the person on the left and much less like the person on the right. And in order to do that, we're going to have to meet their usability expectations. And that's combining the usability that they expect from their B2C experiences as a consumer with what they get, what they need in a business context. And one of the challenges there is that the business context creates this conflict between cost and value that we don't really get in a consumer-facing website. In the consumer-facing website, we're the buyer and the approver all in one, and we can do this trade-off between cost and value based on what matters to us. But in the business context, if I'm the guy on the right, I'm motivated much more by value, things like convenience of ordering, quality and reliability. I don't really care as much about cost because it's not my budget. On the other hand, purchasing and finance groups generally focus much more on cost, and they don't really care so much about value. And what we should be doing is finding some middle ground. The manager here in the middle, he holds the budget, so he wants the budget to be spent wisely, but he also wants his people to be focusing on serving customers, so he wants convenience, he wants quality products as well. If procurement and finance are too much to the left, then what happens is the end users on the right just ignore them. We go outside the corporate system, we buy online, we expense stuff, we get our manager to sign off the invoices. So actually, in a way, it's counterproductive when if procurement and finance try to save costs too much, they actually don't generate the savings at all because people just ignore their edicts. So modern technology has to help the people in the middle. It has to help people make the decision that their manager would want them to do. So we need that convenience, that ease, that value of interactive catalogs, personalized recommendations in the software. So when we search for something, the software has to be smart and give us the search results that fit our needs, rather than giving us hundreds of search results that most of which are irrelevant. We need simple checkout, one-click checkout, simple approval. We don't want to have a complicated screen where we have to enter lots of data before the order can be created. And increasingly, we're expecting mobile first, not just a mobile screen where we have to sort of key in data with our fat fingers. Increasingly, mobile first means voice enabled, using camera features, using location awareness to make the ordering process far more easy. But we need that in a B2B context. We need the the software to help us balance price with value, so we're making judicious decisions, and that our managers can see we're making judicious decisions. We have to comply with companies' rules and policies, such as what we're allowed to spend as an individual, or budgets, or which suppliers are approved to be ethical and safe and secure. We can't just buy from anyone that we want to in a business context. We can't run that risk because it's the company's brand that's at stake. And we need to have some sort of authorization if the spend is more than our approval limit, but that has to happen really quickly. We can't be waiting days for an approval, because if we have to wait days, we'll just ignore the process and order online. Now, of course, that varies by company, and I remember speaking to one event about this need to empower individuals and not enforce things. And a guy said, well, we don't have that problem in our business. We don't have rogue buying. And it turns out he worked for a nuclear power generator, which is okay. Well, that's quite reassuring in a way that they're not buying spare fuel rods off Amazon. But I think the point is that organization has a sort of a culture. The people who work for that are the people who will follow the procedures, will follow the rules, and are happy to comply with those strict controls. Whereas if you're like this company on the right, trying to attract millennials, new working styles, you're not going to be able to get away with the enforcement culture and strict limits on what people can buy, and waiting 3 days for requisitions to be approved. So that's really why we need to switch much more for an enablement culture. And what you find actually is, if you try to enforce too much, people will just ignore you, or worse, they may even leave the company. So one reaction from procurement might be to say, okay, well, in that case, we'll just give up. We'll let everybody shop on Amazon. What do we care? Well, I think there are some reasons why you should care. Marketplaces such as Amazon and distributor websites and things have a lot of good things about them in terms of usability, but there are also some negatives. We don't know in this case whether the supplier that are being highlighted are approved. Are they legal? Are they reliable? Are they ethical? Are these safety gloves being hand stitched by children in Vietnam, for example? We need to validate that and prevent people buying unethical products. And it's also, you'll notice here that there are lots and lots of search results. There are 200,000 search results for gloves. That isn't really going to help our user find the one that they need to protect them from the threats that they face in a business. So actually, this isn't a very good user experience for buying safety gloves in a business context.
Right, and thanks, Doug. And you're right. And you can actually still use the catalogs as a part of the process from a procurement standpoint. So there's versatile catalogs that can be both guided buying catalogs from an internal standpoint, and internal catalogs can be managed by vendor, by location, or by type of item. And you can have that one-click experience by, as soon as you finish shopping and check out of that cart, it'll be routed for approval before a purchase order can be created. So versatile catalogs are a key feature for ease of use as well as user adoption. The catalogs provide compliance with company rules and policies in a familiar format for the user that they use in their day-to-day personal lives, and then by extending that out to the mobile devices, allowing them to browse and shop catalogs from their tablets, from their mobile phones, build the shopping cart again, just as they would in their personal day-to-day shopping experiences, submit the items as a requisition, and then have them route for approval if needed, and then also be approved by that mobile device as well. So now it's providing access to the information and details to not only be able to enter the request in a familiar format, approve those quickly and easily via the mobile device, but then also look at and review and have visibility to the history of those transactions as well. A further extension of that is punch-out capabilities. So punch-out takes the catalog a step further by leveraging the relationship that you may have with your vendors that support the punch-out functionality. In this particular instance, the vendor will maintain the catalog for you as their customer, your items, your pricing that you've negotiated with the vendor. So users, again, only going to be able to select the items that have been permitted based upon the relationship with the vendor. You're going to get the pricing that you negotiated with the vendor, which would often be better pricing than what you would get if you shop the site online. And you're still going to be able to maintain the requisition flow and process with any approvals that are necessary. Shop the site, again, in a familiar and easy format, build a shopping cart, check out, and now those items can create a requisition. And as soon as the checkout process occurs, it can immediately be submitted for approval before the purchase order is created and then ultimately sent electronically to the vendor. So catalogs are a very important and key part of the overall transformation process, not only from the company's side of things by being able to put controls in place and enforce policies because of the management of the catalogs, but then also the ease of use, which furthers the adoption of the overall process by the user, and they're not as resistant to the change or to the processes that are being put in place. We've also got vendor contract capabilities. Again, this is improving the process by enforcing pricing and leveraging your best suppliers. So in addition to catalogs, you can also negotiate pricing for items over certain periods of time with those suppliers. This is transparent to the user. The negotiation with the supplier occurs as a part of the organization's relationship with that supplier. You set up and maintain the contracts, and then as the user generates requisitions and creates those, you're going to then enforce the pricing to make sure that you're getting it from the right vendor at the right price. And again, that also helps streamline the approval process as well. The more controls that you have over the overall experience when the requisitions are first entered, then the quicker and easier it is going to be to have those get approved before the purchase order created, which is also a key goal of what we're looking to do here as a part of this process. You can also involve the vendors in your process as well. And by involving the vendors, you're going to improve the relationship with the vendor and still recognize additional savings, both in time within your organization. So further enhance the process by getting those vendors or suppliers involved. Allow the vendor to enter their own invoices to eliminate data entry by your accounts payable team while still maintaining the invoice approval processes to handle any exceptions. There's also a self-service aspect to this, so you can allow the vendor to update and maintain any of their specific vendor information, all with appropriate approval processes for any changes or entries that they make. So this will help streamline the process because now once the purchase order is created, the invoice will be able to be entered quicker. With the invoices entered quicker and then able to be easily approved, the vendors will get paid quicker, again, improving the overall relationship with that vendor and making them a part of the process. And again, from a vendor standpoint, also having approvals. Any changes or additions that the vendor may make as a part of the vendor portal can have approval processes associated with them. So you're managing and making sure that any of those edits are controlled and approved by the appropriate people. And then also extending the vendor approval to allow the end users, the requesters, to be able to submit vendors that they may want to recommend as an overall part of the process. But again, managing and controlling any vendors that ultimately will be approved by the organization and then sent over into the ERP. Now, from an approval standpoint, ultimately what you're looking to be able to do here is automate and streamline the approval processes. If you make this too long-winded, it's simply going to be ignored by the user, as Duncan mentioned earlier. It needs to be as scientific and precise as possible so that you're only seeing what you're interested in and you're only seeing what exceeds the rules that you have in place. So you do that by, again, enforcing catalogs, enforcing vendor contracts, so that when items are requested, you know that they are going to be items that are approved. You look at and manage budgets so that if items are being requested that are within budget, you don't have as many levels of approval as you might need. Again, you manage those exceptions. And then from an approver standpoint, you make it easy for them to quickly view and approve any of those items that fall into those exceptions. approve via email, approve via the mobile device, get notified when you have items that are pending your approval, or if they've sat in the queue too long, get another notification, bypass levels of approval if they're taking too long, have alternates for when somebody's out of the office or on vacation, add approvers to the process if needed via ad hoc approval, and then have the approval processes available, the unlimited rules, the unlimited approvals based upon the fields at the line item level. But again, keep it as precise as possible so that you're not weighing down the process and then ultimately causing the experience to be a bad one for the user because they're not able to quickly and easily get things through that process. And then overall, throughout the entire procurement application, you're going to provide comprehensive status monitoring. This is not just at the approver level or the management level, it's at the requester level, it's also at the accounts payable level, so that every part of the transaction, who touched it, when they touched it, any edits that were made, any comments that are made are available to be viewed and looked at. So at a glance, you can see where your transactions are in the process, what has happened to them, what needs to happen to them, and then drill down and get more information and more details. You can attach files to the request so that you're able to see the quotes or the pictures or the graphical representations that need to be a part of that, so there's not as many questions. You can have the invoice be a part of the transaction, the packing slip be a part of the transaction, and again have visibility throughout the entire process from the time that the requisition is entered all the way through accounts payable, so that any of those users can have the information that they need at their fingertips and be able to have full visibility throughout the whole entire process. And again, all of this is controlled, so you're only going to be able to see what you're allowed to and need to be able to see as a user, but now you don't have to call somebody, email somebody, and again, slow down this process because you don't have the information that you need. And by providing that visibility throughout the entire procurement process, you have better integration between your key finance departments, procurement and accounts payable. Everybody's able to get access to the information that they're allowed to have access and that they need. So from a requester standpoint, you don't have to call somebody and ask them, where is my requisition, or has that PO been created, or has the check been cut for payment because the vendor's asking me. You have access and visibility to that information if you're allowed. And then the visibility of the information allows you to collaborate more as an organization, and you can get visibility into who is buying what and from whom, which again is going to allow you not only to improve your overall processes, but make better decisions and manage better relationships with those vendors, more visibility into your costs, and then ultimately have that be a part of the process that lowers those costs as a part of the procurement application as well.
So I think that's a really strong message for there about visibility and the things that you can do once you have it. But in order to get that visibility, you need to have all your colleagues using the system in the way that you want them to. And so that's summed up by this mantra of making the right way easy and the wrong way hard. Making the right way easy means smart, easy to use e-procurement software, B2C usability in a B2B context. It's got to enable colleagues rather than delay and restrict them, because too much control, we lose the visibility because people just ignore us. So we've got to combine the uploaded catalogs with punch outs, where that's a better way of enabling the transaction. We've seen some of the advantages for the punch out experience. I use the safety gloves as an example, where there's a very specialized item. If we punch out to a specialist distributor, they can advise the user based on what industry you're in and what hazards they need protection from, as which are the most appropriate products to buy from. Then if we can guide colleagues to our approved suppliers, we can protect our organization's customers from the risks of using unreliable or illegal or unethical suppliers. So that's how we sell this internally. We've got to try and avoid edicts, blanket instructions, blunt instrument approval routings as Foy described, if we can make it scientific, then we'll get better compliance. But we do have to be firm then. Once we've made the right way easy, then there's no excuse for going outside the system and just buying off the internet and then hoping to sign off the invoice at a later date. We've really got to retrain and manage the people who don't comply with the policies. We've maybe got to sanction the suppliers who facilitate it. So now let's talk a little bit about the adoption barriers that have existed in the past and how modern software is overcoming them. For many people, artificial intelligence is viewed as a threat, and we at Forrester don't see it that way. We actually see it as an opportunity for procurement and finance to be far more effective. It augments our knowledge. AI can process more data, give us the visibility, and highlight to us the signal from the noise. It can liberate us. Some of the automated turning of requisitions into purchase orders and matching of invoices with purchase orders and receipts. If we can take that workload off our plate, then that frees up the people to spend time on more important activities, like maybe investigating why there are price variances between invoices and orders. What's the systemic problem that's causing that, and how can we fix it so we don't have errors in our product costing or our budgeting? And it could also amplify our power. So if we can identify that root cause, then we can ask the system to say, okay, find us every other order or every other invoice where the same circumstances apply, and provide the same fix to that situation, so we can actually do something once and then have it replicated multiple times throughout the system. So modern software does that for us, and here's an example from AP invoice processing. I've spoken with a number of clients who've implemented modern technology in AP linked with procurement. So it's importing invoices, whether it's entered into a portal or maybe PDF images, automatically extracting the data, matching the invoices with purchase orders, frees up the AP staff to focus on the discrepancy resolution. All sorts of value that you can derive by reallocating the people, but it also improves supplier relationships. That self-service that Foy talked about reduces supplier queries that often suck up 30% of the AP department's time. The suppliers are happy because they can do it online. They can see when they're going to be paid. They can focus on the real problem areas that they need to resolve. And if you pay them faster, you're going to have happier suppliers. You're going to have improved relationships. They're going to be more willing to innovate with you and give you extra service. So there's a lot of benefits from speeding up this process. So some of you may be thinking, well, this is great. I'd love to get those benefits, but it's going to be too hard because I'm not a large company to implement an enterprise system. Well, actually, software as a service, modern applications make your life a lot easier. This is from a survey last year asking about why people are implementing software as a service. There's lots of benefits that they experience. Easier to implement, easier to use, improve business agility from changing approval routings after you've gone live to refine them. Lots of good reasons for buying SaaS. And particularly in e-procurement, today's software is really much easier for suppliers. I think if you go around a lot of your suppliers, you'll find that they're already uploading catalogs to other customers, or they've got a website presence that supports punch out. There are service providers that can help them enable punch out if they can't do it natively. The invoice processing software accepts invoices in all sorts of formats. It's not old style EDI. We can have scanned images, but we can have emailed attachments, we can have XML, we can have self-service keyed in through a portal, all sorts of ways of getting the invoice from the supplier system into our own. Modern user interfaces mean that there's far less effort from us in the rollout. We don't need to train people how to buy stuff on the internet. catalog searches are intuitive. We can create smart forms and process templates, which make it easier for people to put in non-standard requisitions. It doesn't all have to be free text. And because there isn't an on-premise deployment, serving mid-market, smaller customers is much easier. It's so easy to enable a new customer on the SaaS platform.
Yeah, and I think, Duncan, that one of the things that really resonates, going to that core concept of just ease of access, right? So, and just really perpetuating that message that especially to the mid-market space, that this is all accessible, right? So that first step to eliminating those adoption barriers is easily just ease of access. And you'll see, certainly take the opportunity to speak about how some of our upcoming features that are in our timely release in the next couple of months from Workplace 2018, as well as examining how our product roadmap, and as an example, can tie to some of these existing expectations and planning for expectations in the future. Obviously, accessibility from a SaaS perspective. One good example is some of the enhanced workplace OCR that's being introduced in the next couple of months. We're at a point now where we no longer need. First of all, it's affordable, and it's with the expectations around line level purchase order or non-purchase order invoice automation is now achievable in this space, and achievable quickly. With some of the business learning and AI behind the scenes, you simply activate it and you can start using it immediately. Right, and obviously with those standard integrations to leading ERPs and API capability to other software platforms. So ease of access is the first step, and another one of those core concept is in order to take advantage of these solutions, users need to use the system. So another one of our new features in this release is not only new mobile features. People are using the mobile devices more. People are using their application in a different way. So there is a focus on the UI in our upcoming release, as well as in the future. And obviously, once we sort of meet and exceed those user expectations, users are now using the system, those controls, and everything is happening in the background. And now we've got that single system of truth and that information. So we're at a point where we can anticipate those next set of expectations. Going back to what you mentioned, Duncan, is that we have this information. Now we freed up time through automation and invoice automation. Now those users are able to be more strategic. So part of what we're releasing in the next couple of months is even more advanced KPIs and out of the box metrics, so that now that information is in the system, they're able to use it, analyze it, and really make some business decisions. Of course, as we look even further into the future, this really sets the stage to just enhance upon that. So invoice automation, as it relates to document processing, is always the focus. Let's free up those AP team members. But the tools that we're talking about are now able to be expanded into other areas of the procurement space, such as, what about our warehouse staff? There's tons of packing slips, for organizations that are adopting a three-way match process for the procurement process. There's another opportunity for near zero entry processing, automating that process and freeing them up to be a little more strategic. And obviously, once that information is available, we do, we can expand on that artificial intelligence and business learning to other areas of the application, so that we are truly at a point where our users can spend less time teaching the system, and now the system can teach us. And that artificial intelligence and business learning can be making suggestions on, perhaps you should be purchasing this item. Perhaps your approval flow is a little too complicated. You've approved this, every time. Let's make some adjustments. So these are areas that we're very much looking forward to bringing into the future.
I think let's summarize what we've talked about today into a few key points. Really, this is an opportunity to transform the procurement organization, to really play a key role in the wider organization's digital transformation, to refocus it on what matters to the organization's customers and be more strategically important. And we can do that if we implement modern e-procurement software that gets us the rapid adoption and the widespread adoption, which in turn delivers the visibility that we need in order to make smart decisions. We have to think of our system as enabling colleagues to make smart decisions. We're not telling them what to buy and what not to buy. We're giving them the information that they need to balance price and value. And we're monitoring that with the visibility. So, maybe if we look at the approval processes and we have certain approval steps where 99% of the transactions are approved, we've probably got the tolerances set too low. We're giving that manager too many transactions to rubber stamp. On the other hand, if say 10% of them are being rejected, maybe we have a problem at the other end, that people are submitting requisitions knowing that then they're not going to be approved. So why are they submitting them in the first place? That visibility that can allow us to refine the tolerances, give people more information so that they're not having 10% of their transactions rejected by a manager. The last point is, we've talked about how a lot of the adoption barriers are removed, that we've long since passed the point at which suppliers could say we're not playing in this e-commerce world. More and more of them are able to do it. Even the small ones are really very happy to upload some information about their products into your system, enter their invoices online, see self-service when they're going to get paid. But if there are some that aren't, or their e-commerce capability isn't good enough, they can't support punch out, maybe that's got to be a factor in our choice of supplier. Cost isn't everything. We've talked about the importance of enabling users. So that means picking suppliers based on their ability to integrate with us and provide a good shopping experience to our colleagues. That includes helping people balance price with value, maybe pushing them to buy cheaper items rather than upselling them on more expensive ones. That should all be part of the criteria for picking suppliers.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that with us and your insight there, Duncan. I want to give a brief overview of Paramount Workplace here for the next couple of slides, and then we'll go through and answer some questions. So just a little bit about Paramount. We were founded in 1995. So for more than 23 years, we've done spend management solutions. And spend management to us is the requisition and procurement functionality that we have talked about today, as well as expense and AP automation solutions that we have further developed over the years. Our headquarters is in metropolitan Detroit, and we've got offices around the US as well as Canada. Our support and our development teams are located primarily in our headquarters office, and then we also have some additional consulting as well as sales resources in the remote offices. And what we do is we offer mobile and web-based cloud solutions for spend management. We've got a worldwide presence. We've got more than 750 customers and more than 131,000 users worldwide. So we do support multi-currency as well as multi-languages for those organizations that are in other countries, as well as may have subsidiaries or offices in those countries. And even though spend management is truly a horizontal application, meaning that it can apply to any organization that wants to be able to improve and manage their spending, as we've discussed during the webinar today, we have seen success in primarily about 14 different industries throughout those years. And that success comes in hospitality, sports and entertainment, not-for-profit, state and local government, municipalities, utilities, and well as others. As you can see, and we talked about during the slides there are some organizations who have functionality or have environments that are more conducive to being able to implement a spend management solution because of the type of organization they are, budget compliance or grant compliance that they may have. But you can also see from this that there's other organizations that can and make use of the spend management and see the return on investment like any other organization as well. This will give you some graphical representations of some customers across those industries that have been successful with the solutions from Paramount Workplace. Certainly some that you might recognize, and there's obviously many others across those industries as well. And just final slide from a Paramount standpoint, I'll give you a little bit idea of our product timeline. As I said, the company was formed as Paramount Technologies in 1995. And as you can see throughout the years, as we've progressed, we've added additional functionality related to spend management above and beyond requisition, going into procurement expense, as well as AP automation. And then also many different partnerships throughout those years as well, where we've attempted to leverage where the market's going with the applications, where we may be a good fit, integrating to other financial and ERP-based systems in order to take what we have done very well over the years and implement that in other environments, and then also making additional strategic relationships and or strategic partnerships to further the spend management solutions that we offer, all the way to a little bit about the latest and greatest that we'll see on our product roadmap as those come up. All right, so thank you guys very much for attending the webinar today. We do want to take a few minutes and answer some questions. So I've got some that we received during the presentation here, and I'll go through those questions, and then we can ask Duncan for his input as needed. So our first question is from Mike out of Denver, Colorado. And the question is, how do we make the business case for a spend management solution and get started?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Mike. One I get asked a lot. So there's often some low-hanging fruit to be found when you implement the system. Wasteful spending going on where certain categories are spread across too many vendors, and you can get some great savings by putting it all together in one contract, or maybe duplication going on. Even things like double billing, where invoices are getting paid effectively twice because you're not matching them correctly with purchase orders in the system. But of course, you don't know how much saving you're going to get because you don't have visibility of it until you actually put it in the system. But if you speak to the vendors in the market, they can generally give you great case studies of how other customers of theirs have found savings from aggregating spend or reducing duplicate invoicing, or getting better visibility and then cutting out wasteful or unnecessary transactions. So that's the core ROI, but I think it's also important to stress the relevance of e-procurement to wider business goals, such as driving innovation, improving the relationships with suppliers, getting better protection against risk. Some of the highly regulated industries, savings are nice, but supplier risk protection is mandatory. So you can use that one. Or if you're your organization is trying to drive up the employee experience and have happier employees who stay longer with the company, then you can piggyback on that by saying, we need to give them easy to use software rather than the obsolete ERP stuff that we're currently inflicting on them. So it's kind of a combination, Mike, of the hard ROI from savings that you're extrapolating from what others have received, to the strategic goal alignment, whatever is going on in your organization.
Okay. Another question from Angie out of Kansas City, Missouri. What criteria should we evaluate in choosing a provider?
Well, Forrester publishes an evaluation ourselves. What we look at is we really try to focus on what are the key differentiators. We certainly advocate against creating an overlong requirements document that lists everything you think you might want to see in a procurement system. Really, the key is who's going to help you get the best adoption by internal colleagues and the best adoption by suppliers. So you're looking for the capabilities about ease of use, And ease of use isn't sort of a graphical design issue. It's not about pretty colors. It's about things like personalization, helping people find the item that they need, making the workflow streamlined, and that sort of thing. So we look as much at product roadmap as we do at current requirements. Is the vendor working on using artificial intelligence, implementing the power of the mobile phone to make buying easier in the future? All sorts of things that are going to be required in 2 or 3 years' time that you may not think to put down in your own requirements document. And then we also look at things like cultural fit. You know, you have to get a good feeling from a vendor that it cares about your success, that it understands what's going to be needed to make you successful, that it has the resources available itself or through partners to actually help you implement the product, get your suppliers hooked up, and then start to use the visibility to drive business benefit. So I think those are the main things: adoption, track record, roadmap, cultural fit.
All right. Next question is from Greg in Los Angeles, California. What if we have a lot of small suppliers? How do we bring them into the system?
Yeah, I think it's really the technology has improved vastly over the years to make life a lot easier for small suppliers, and really, small suppliers can generally use a mobile phone or have access to the internet to do something self-service. In many ways, it's kind of the mid-sized suppliers who are more of a problem, because there you're going to want to connect them up electronically through email attachments or XML integration, and that's sometimes harder than just giving people a mobile app or a website portal to log into. There are some things like selling the benefits. If you've got a lot of suppliers, you've kind of got to treat it like a marketing program and communicate, explain the value, follow up the communications with personal conversations, check who's doing what you want them to do, and really reward adoption. Maybe you pay people earlier if they're using your e-procurement system to submit their invoices, that sort of thing. So there are a few tactics. Foy, what have you found to work in your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I would certainly agree, with what you relayed there in regards to, the different suppliers. Obviously, suppliers want to be able to do business with an organization, and they always want to be able to be improving their processes. I mean, one of the things that we found, we talked about catalogs and we talked about punch out. In order to make it easy for the users, that also helps the vendor out as well. So there's third-party solution providers out there that offer punch out as a service, where they'll collate the catalogs for you and then help you out with that overall process. So even if they are smaller suppliers, the technology today that's available from catalogs and punch out, is designed to make it easier for them. And then again, there's companies and organizations out there that we've worked with throughout the years that can help enable that process as well, because obviously a lot of the times you do have specialized suppliers in your locality or in your region that you want to be able to work with because of what they provide you and the services that they provide, and then we certainly want to make that easier for them to be able to do that as well.
It's got to be done by consent, hasn't it? We can't rely on sort of issuing instructions and demanding it and saying, well, we won't use you if you don't do it. It's got to be done with consent. So that's why I'm kind of a fan of explaining the benefits to them. They'll get transactions approved faster. They'll maybe be paid faster. It'll streamline the whole commerce, removes friction in the process. It's actually better for everyone this way.
Exactly. Yeah. No, there's certainly benefits for everyone across the board. Whether you're the organization or whether you're the supplier, by looking at enabling some of these functions and features. Certainly you may not be able to get every vendor to enter their own invoices, but for those that can realize the benefit of that, and then be able to submit those, like we talked about with the vendor portal early on, they will hopefully be able to get paid faster, and that is certainly a benefit for them. But either way, ultimately by automating the process, implementing simple, precise approvals, you are going to provide the information with the visibility that we talked about, so that those pieces will speed it up as well, and to certainly get those suppliers paid faster. All right, so I want to thank everybody for joining us today. We certainly do appreciate it. If there are any additional questions that anyone may have, you can certainly email us, and we'll be glad to answer those. And if there's any additional questions via the on-demand or scheduled webinars that we didn't get to today, then we will address those via email and get back to you. So again, I want to thank everybody for their time and attending the webinar today. And then I also want to thank Duncan and Spencer for being a part of this, and certainly hope it was of value to you, and hope everybody has a great day.